Good morning, everybody. So my name is Robert. You may have seen me recently through the media with sharing some of my story. Beside me here, we also have Rochelle, whose story has also been told in the media recently, and her youngest daughter, Darcy. Before we begin, I'd actually like to ask everybody to take a moment's silence, just for those that we have lost to suicide, and also those that may already be struggling. I would also like to make special mention of Georgia, who took her own life 9 weeks ago tomorrow, and she would have been 23 years old today. Thank you, everybody. Now I'm going to ask Rochelle, who's going to share some of her story and how the mental health system, due to its lack of funding and resourcing, has let her down throughout some of her life. Rochelle.
Hi guys, my name's Rochelle. I'm a young solo mum, and unfortunately the DHB didn't really take to my needs as what I needed. I tried committing suicide quite a few times, especially when I was younger. The most recent ones were, even though I had children, I still didn't feel like I was good enough for life. I felt like I could not do what my kids needed me to do. So I tried taking my own life. Even the police department didn't take it seriously. They dragged me out of the bath that I was in. They pretty much just threw me into the ambulance and just said, just another one of these options, another one of these kids that just does this thing. Went up to the Christchurch hospital and spent probably 15, 20 minutes there, and I had cuts all over my body. They checked them over and said I'm good to go home, and went home with a few friends. And then within half an hour later, I tried committing suicide again. Luckily, I didn't succeed. I had a friend there that actually did care. Just last year, I lost a baby, and then I got really, really depressed, and I felt like I had no one around me, and I thought, I wanted to end everything again. Even though I had my other children, as I said earlier, I thought they were better off without me. So I said to Rob, I wanted to commit suicide. Now, he was very, very helpful, and, we had a battle within 2 hours of him trying to stop me to go out the door, which ended up with my arm through the window, but hey. We went up to the hospital and they gave me a sedative, and that sedative was to try and calm me down because I just didn't want to be there. Now, I managed to escape through the hospital out the emergency ambulance bay. No one followed me. No one cared. So I had Rob and a few other friends and a family member of mine actually drag me back. I got back and they had put me into the assessment unit, and I only really got to see them and talk for a little bit. She won't with people. So I got seen, and all they did was give me 3 pamphlets and said, take your pick on what you want to do. And they never followed up with that. So I was a bit disappointed. If I didn't have Rob and the friends that I had, I wouldn't have gotten as far as what I have come now. So thank you guys for listening to my story.
Thank you, Rochelle. So I want to share a wee bit of my story as well, which happened a few years prior to Rochelle's. After the birth of my son, me and my son's mother separated. And after that, I started to spiral downwards. Basically, I ended up living off a diet of alcohol, pizza, and cigarettes. And that was my diet. Then one night, I'm not even sure how I ended up at that point, but I remember walking out to go outside to have a cigarette, and I had just been cutting up my pizza, so I had my knife in my hand, and there I sat for the next 5 hours on my back deck, basically screaming within myself that if I'm meant to be here, give me a reason. Show me a reason that I'm supposed to be here. I was ignoring pretty much every text, every phone call that I was getting from friends, because as far as I was concerned, I was just burdening them with how I was feeling. Now, difference being is leading up to that point, I didn't isolate myself. I was actually the exact opposite. I was constantly surrounding myself with people so that I was constantly distracted. But that night, obviously, I was by myself. A friend of mine became worried at the fact that I wasn't responding to the texts or phone calls, which was unusual because me and him usually went out on that night. He turned up to my flat, knocked on the front door, no answer. He went to leave, but something in him told him to, no, come back. He's got to be here somewhere. He doesn't go anywhere else. It's not working. So he came around and checked my back deck. There he battled with me for the next hour, trying to get me to take the knife away from my neck. Eventually, he did manage to talk it away from me, and the moment it was gone, he picked me up, and he was a small little horse jockey, so he was a very small guy, and he carried me to his car and took me straight up to the Christchurch Emergency Department. There we sat in the waiting room for another 3 hours, waiting to be seen by anybody. When we arrived, my friend went up and told the nurse why we were there, and that his concerns for me, but they still left us sitting in the waiting room for 3 hours. Once we were seen, we spoke to our crisis team for about 45 minutes. They gave me a sedative and said, if you're not feeling better in a few weeks, come back and see us. And that was it. I'd made it very, very clear to them that if they let me go that night, my intent was to go home and finish what I'd started. They still thought that just simply giving me the sedative and sending me on my way was enough. Luckily enough, my friend kept me under his watch very closely for the next few days and for the coming weeks. Following on from that, once I then reached out to my GP for help, she managed to, with a bit of pressure from me and my family, get myself some counselling sessions, 3 of them. And then luckily enough, I was able then to start talking to my friends and family about what I was going through and able to actually overcome that. Following on from that, I realised that there was this hole where when people are reaching out for help, they may not be getting it. You know, there's only so much funding that the nurses can use to help. It's to the point that we are triaging mental health patients. You can't do that. You can't judge somebody based on how they present when it comes to mental health. You can't see it. But where our nurses and doctors are being placed in this position that they have to triage, because there's only so much funding that only goes so far, people do get dropped by the system. So as part of that, I decided that I wanted to raise some awareness around suicide prevention and obviously around suicide itself. Get people talking and get this issue out of being this dark taboo topic that we do not talk about. So I decided I was going to try run an event here in Christchurch. I set up a Facebook page to help organise that. And unfortunately, due to a couple of roadblocks that I encountered, the event wasn't able to go forward. But something I noticed is simply the page was called Suicide Awareness Prevention. That was all it was. But just simply by having the group called that, we started having people message the page saying, hey, can I talk to you? I need some help. So I'd talk to them as much as I could. You know, I'm not a trained professional. So I just talk to them as much as I can when it comes to that relating. Almost 4 years later, this page is now much bigger and run very differently. It's no longer an event organising page. It's now used for people to come and get help. But again, not from the professionals, because we know they're already overstretched. From everyday people that have battled this stuff themselves. Back in just before Suicide Awareness Month last year, we had 800 likes on the page. I looked this morning, we're now at 6,530 likes. This is spread across 45 countries. We get roughly, on average, 100 new likes a week. Now, it's awesome that, you know, people are knowing they can reach out. But it's also quite a scary thought when you think that's 100 new people that are having to reach out. We field somewhere in the vicinity of 30 to 150 new messages every week. I've got a team of up to about 11 admin that assist me in this from all around the world. We've got a few from the United States, a couple we've had from the UK, Australia, and obviously here in New Zealand. Rochelle herself is actually one of the admins as well on the page. And we point out that we're not professionals. We are people that care. We know what that darkness feels like, and we want to help. We want to try and take some of that strain off the system so that those that are in the most desperate need can get it. Now, obviously, we do refer people to services where needed. We have in one instance had to notify the police due to being seriously concerned about somebody's welfare. But going forward, I would like to see something like the page we run being used and operated by professionals so that when people can't want to reach out, it is much easier to do so through social media these days. People don't feel, especially teenagers and the young ones, don't feel as comfortable ringing somebody. They'd much rather just message somebody on Facebook. The vision that I've created for the page is a wee bit harsh to hear at times, but it's ultimately what I want to do. And that is killing the stigma around suicide. Because we need to get you guys talking. We need to get the stories out there so that people know without a doubt that they are not alone. That there is people out there that know what this darkness is like. So ultimately the hope Rochelle and myself and a few others have had from coming forward and sharing our stories is to let people know that it is okay to talk about this. I've challenged multiple political parties recently at their conferences to say the word suicide. Just simply say the word, because most of them won't, because it's such a dark, taboo topic, and we need to change that. And it starts here with everybody here in the room and online talking about it. Share your stories, whether it's yours or your friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob and Rochelle, for coming along today, and thank you for your bravery.